morning, everybody. Sujiv, very good morning to you. All the ambassadors, colleagues from the UN, you two, all invitees here, distinguished guests, civil society, government representative, all of you. It's a pleasure to be here and to represent the United Nations. So today's topic, as we heard, is a shared future, people, innovation, cooperation. Okay, so what are we going to do with that? I just take it that each of you are here because of this subject, and therefore it means that you believe that creativity and passion can really, I would say, change something, can bring the world to be a better place. And we also all believe that this region has a great potential, hence the Himalayan consensus. I do too. So we are on the same wavelength. We also share many things. We have the same framework of rights with the United Nations, by the way, and other organizations. We share the same planet, and therefore we share the same responsibilities. So we need to build a shared future. So for that, the UN has tried to help a little bit with these Sustainable Development Goals, and all the member states have agreed that with the Agenda 2030, that should be the vision of our future. But is it really? Let us see. But what you already know about the SDG, and I'm not going to do a whole lecture on SDGs, is that all the goals are interdependent, interrelated, they cannot be achieved if one is, the other ones are not achieved. So it means that they represent these very universal challenges that we need to address. So what do we need to address these challenges? Well, we need knowledge, expertise, understanding also of what this knowledge really means. We need commitment, we need people willing to make a change. We need a vision, a sense of direction. And we need innovative ways of thinking, of developing, of producing. We need cooperation. So when I say we need knowledge and expertise, what I mean is that we cannot build a shared future if we don't know what our present is and what our mistakes in the past were. And you know, what happened is that there are many, many research and reports and studies that have been done that tell us what we did wrong and what we did right, and so on and so forth. But do we really listen? Do we really understand what these reports mean? For instance, I discovered not so long ago, discussing with some experts on environment, that in the planet we have a finite amount of water. We can't create water. We have a finite amount of water, which is recycled through what we drink, through the clouds, through the sea. So when we understand that it is really, really finite, that we can't create it, then maybe the whole notion of contamination and pollution takes another dimension. And this is what I mean with knowledge and expertise. We have it, but do we listen and do we understand it? So this is maybe where innovation can come. Innovation is not only about technology. It's about finding new ways of doing things. Cannot we use innovation to also explain to humanity what it means? Have we really used innovation properly to make sure that all the lessons of the past have been understood and shared? That would be interesting to put all the brilliant minds together to think about that. So we need to explain the challenges. We need to have innovative ways of sharing the knowledge. So that's already one way innovation can be used. Now we need, as I said, commitment from government, we need the commitment from people, they should be ready to make a change. And actually, there is nothing less obvious than that. I must say, have you noticed the game that is being played most of the time by everybody? That we blame on somebody else the changes that do not happen. Oh, governments don't do enough, said the citizens when they don't do their share. You know, or government blames citizens because they don't do what they should. We play the blame game all the time. But the fact is that we all need to do something. We all have a responsibility in that. And that reminds me of the anecdote of the colibri that wants to put out a fire. And that goes with his little teeny beak to take a bit of water, and he goes and he puts that water on the fire, and he goes back to take water, and he goes and put the water on the fire, and then a big bird comes and says, "Hey, what do you think you're doing? Do you think that with your little drop of water like this, you're going to put out the fire?" And the colibri answers, "At least I will have done my share." And that is also what we need. And maybe there are innovative ways of explaining people how to do their shares. Now we need vision and sense of direction. And have you noticed as well that we have so many messages that tell us how to change our way of life, but without really offering an alternative vision of what this new life would look like? We just know that we need to cut out on the fossil fuel, we need to cut out on meat, says a vegan, we need to change on different things. But have we really offered a different vision? Because you see, for instance, the SDGs as well offer a framework of actions that need to be undertaken, of objectives, let's say, to be considered. But most of the time, people believe that their individual action will not bear any fruit. You know, and who wants to make effort when you think that nothing is going to change? So it's a little bit like my colibri at the beginning, you know? But we need to give meanings to the actions that we undertake. And that's why we need to have a new narrative. And you see, the SDGs offer a framework, but the narrative is the fiction. Actually, we people, we need histories, and we need stories. We can only function if a story is told to us. We are building our world on stories. We read books, whatever they are, we read books and so on, because we need a story. So we need to rewrite our story. We need to write the story of our future, not only to have a list of do's and don'ts. And that's maybe what is missing, and maybe where innovation also can help. And of course, each country has to write its own story. We have global objectives, universal challenges, and global commitment. But the narrative is very important. So we need innovative ways of making people aware, understanding, committed, and also new ways, innovative ways of producing and developing differently. And I think that Elizabeth already touched on that. But on that issue, I want to come back on something that Sujeev has heard me talk a lot about already in the past, is that generally we equate future with prosperity. Okay, that's one vision. We could challenge that one. Why should future only be with prosperity? And then we equate prosperity with economic growth. Is it that prosperity should only be translated into economic growth? Isn't there another way to look at prosperity? Why is prosperity always equated with money? I mean, we live in a world where we have evolved. The whole understanding and notion, for instance, of human rights and happiness start to be understood. We have Bhutan that has a happiness index. And yet, we still consider that prosperity is to have more money, to accumulate more goods. And as a matter of fact, regardless of the consequences that have been explained in the reports that I referred to, we continue to accumulate goods all the time. So I think that we also need innovative ways of thinking prosperity. And I must say that the circular economy, which we are going to hear about later, is a way of maybe thinking prosperity in a different way. But we need to think prosperity in terms of rights. You know, the UN Charter talks about the fact that each person has the very same right of another person, and especially the right to live in dignity. So the notion of dignity and worth, shouldn't there be an element of prosperity? Isn't it a prosperous country, that country where people enjoy their rights? So that's another notion of prosperity that we need to work on. But also, if we think in terms of right, then this is when we become conscious that future generations have rights too. If prosperity is not my accumulation of goods, but prosperity is a country where everybody has rights, including the planet, including the animals, then we think the whole issue differently. And therefore, the shared future can be envisaged. But actually, to have a shared future, you know, Sujeev, we need to have a future, simply. And the way we go, it's not so sure. So let's work on that. But the Himalayan consensus is a very good opportunity to discuss all that. So in order to build that future, I have one proposal. It comes from an economist, a French economist, who one day said it, that each government in the world should have one more minister. Usually we talk about too many ministers in government, but I would propose that we create one more, therefore. And this is the Minister of Future Generation. Each country, each government should have the Minister of Future Generation. The ministry that is going to be the place where we screen all the decisions that we want to take. And we make sure that their impact is going to be positive for the generations to come. It should be the ministry that is the conscience of the governments. And that would be maybe a good idea. So we need to have this collective conscience. We need to pause and reflect and make sure that all the decisions we take are actually with this amount of ethics, with this amount of understanding and the new definition of prosperities. So I think that with all this, I have passed on my message that innovation is not only technology, innovation is not only that way, innovation is many ways of explaining the future, building a new vision, knowing that prosperity is, first of all, the fact that we all have rights and enjoy them. Thank you very much.